That's the taunt right there. Oh boy, look at this, Hubbard falls on it. You can imagine how this is being received up in Cincinnati.
With the NFC champion officially being crowned as the Philadelphia Eagles, there's just one question left to answer. Who will be the AFC champion that meets them in the Super Bowl? Honestly, I was content so long as we got a better game. I kinda had a horse in this race, but I really just wanted to see a good game after what we experienced in the NFC championship, which we did make a post-game recap to that. If you happen to miss that, a link to that will be in the end screen as well. Before we get to the content, this is our third video of the day. If you want to support our grind, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. And check us out on Instagram and TikTok in the description as well. Now that we got all of that out of the way, a lot of you guys have been hitting me up in the DMs telling me how much money you've been making on Prize Picks. A huge shout out to my subscriber Spencer Sims, who's made $7,000 off of his picks over the past 2 weeks. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I play Prize Picks religiously and I post my picks to my story each and every day. And if you want to try out Prize Picks right now, when you use my promo code Mikerophone, you'll get up to a $100 deposit match on your first deposit. And if you get any big hits on Prize Picks, make sure you DM them to me on Instagram so I could feature you in future promos. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? There were a lot of narratives leading up to this game, primarily how cocky the Cincinnati Bengals have been ever since their recent success, which some could mistake for swagger, really depending on which side you're on. But when the mayor of Cincinnati says this,
be it proclaimed, whereas the Cincinnati Bengals are headed to Burrowhead Stadium for their second consecutive AFC Championship game. Whereas at last year's game, the Bengals scored more points than the Chiefs, resulting in a Bengals victory and a Chiefs loss. Whereas Joseph Lee Burrow, who's 3-0 against Mahomes, has been asked by officials to take a paternity test to confirming whether or not he's his father. Whereas all season long, Cincinnati has been on a path of destiny, fighting it out to overcome anyone who stands between them and a Super Bowl win. And whereas Kansas City is named after its neighboring state, which is, just kind of weird. Now, therefore, I, Aftab Pureval, Mayor of the City of Cincinnati, do hereby proclaim January 29th, 2023 as They Gotta Play Us Day in Cincinnati. Thank you.
and when you have all of the members of the Cincinnati Bengals calling Arrowhead Stadium Burrowhead,
I'll see y'all in Burrowhead. Yeah, baby.
and when you consider how the Chiefs season ended last year, you could make an argument that this is turning out to be quite the rivalry. One narrative that I was interested in is the fact that something that we've been saying on this channel for the past 2 years, ever since we even started this channel, is my firm philosophy that I don't believe you could win a Super Bowl with a quarterback that is getting paid a significant amount of money. Quarterback that's getting a top 5 salary at minimum. Patrick Mahomes currently is the 5th highest paid quarterback in the entire NFL. And recently this has come more and more to light, especially given what Brandon Beane said about the Cincinnati Bengals once the Bills were defeated in the AFC divisional.
They right now are on the advantage of a rookie quarterback contract. I don't want to suck bad enough to have to get Jamar Chase. Like, he's a heck of a talent. I'd love to have him, but you gotta go through some lean years to do that. And those guys are on their rookie deals. We're paying Stephon Diggs a pretty hefty number. We're paying Josh Allen a pretty hefty number. So there is the constraints of the cap.
So this brings us to a very interesting point, because I will admit the Cincinnati Bengals and the Philadelphia Eagles have this one thing in common. Both of their quarterbacks are currently on rookie scale contract. Although if Joe Burrow does get extended, it'll probably opt in next year. But that bodes the question, how much should you pay a quarterback if you want sustained success in the future? Tom Brady's literally made a career for himself by taking lesser contracts relative to his standing as a NFL quarterback. Whether that's because of the Patriot way that Bill Belichick really pushed on him when he was a New England Patriot, or the fact that his ex-wife, or wife at the time, Giselle, is one of the most successful supermodels in the world, is a different conversation. But something that I was really interested in this matchup. Typically we give you an in-depth play-by-play, but the problem is when the first half was as defensive as it was, it's really difficult to go in depth on that. I mean, the main play that occurred in the first half, aside from a couple of Cincinnati Bengals field goals was a touchdown reception by Travis Kelce, which by the way, we may have picked in our Instagram story for prize picks. But that aside, towards the end of the first half, it seemed like Joe Burrow started to realize that he had a really solid weapon for himself that had a really remarkable game the last time these two met in the AFC Championship. That was T. Higgins. So while he started getting hot towards the end of the first half, T. Higgins would start out with a bang during the beginning of the second half, coming down with the first touchdown of the game for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, a storyline in this game, or at least a micro storyline in this game, is the fact that T. Higgins wears the number 85 on his jersey and is a wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals, much like a former elite wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. So that prompted Chad Ochocinco, or Chad Johnson, to tweet this about T. Higgins, saying that he's the true Ochocinco, which I thought was really cool, man. I love when legends look at the younger generation and give them props and respect that they deserve. Really good on Chad Johnson for doing that, although I think T. Higgins is going to switch his jersey number to number 5. The Kansas City Chiefs would take over shortly after, and Patrick Mahomes led the Chiefs on a fairly scary drive, primarily because you remember that high ankle sprain that Patrick Mahomes suffered in the divisional matchup? Well, that never fully healed. As a matter of fact, it takes 4 to 6 weeks for that to fully heal, according to my little brother, which, by the way, little bro, you need to create some sort of social media profile so I could tell people where to go so they could get their analysis on their injuries, but that's besides the point. Patrick Mahomes would hobble around, and then he would find Marquez Valdez-Scantling for a huge go-ahead touchdown to put the Kansas City Chiefs up 20-13 towards the end of the third quarter. So the Chiefs looked like they were in control until all of a sudden you saw something that was very atypical from Patrick Mahomes. As a matter of fact, it's never happened in Patrick Mahomes' postseason career, ever. And that's on 1st and 10, Patrick Mahomes fumbles a routine wide receiver screen, which gets recovered by Sam Hubbard. Now, immediately it seems like the Cincinnati Bengals are about to go 3 and out once again. And then on 4th and 6, Zach Taylor makes the call of the year for the Cincinnati Bengals, deciding to not only go for it on 4th and 6, but as Joe Burrow dial up a play to Jamar Chase. A 35-yard pass, which Jamar Chase receives in double coverage, which sets up the Cincinnati Bengals for a game-tying touchdown, which tied it 20-20. Unfortunately, the Cincinnati Bengals wouldn't be able to capitalize upon this momentum, which kind of feels abrupt, I know, given the fact that I'm doing a post-game recap for you guys. So the Kansas City Chiefs will end up facing off against the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. I must admit, this game did have moments where it had a ref ball type of element to it. I mean, there was that one particular drive where Patrick Mahomes literally got 2 third downs, and on his second third down, they called a defensive holding on Eli Apple, but Patrick Mahomes wasn't able to score on that drive. The Cincinnati Bengals got the ball back twice following that drive, and although the game did end due to a brutal unnecessary roughness call, I wasn't necessarily sure if this game was I didn't really get a 100% fully rigged vibe from this game. I mean, I did think there were horrible calls by the refs and some questionable calls from the refs, but I also felt like the Cincinnati Bengals had the opportunity to potentially make it to the Super Bowl if they were able to manage the game properly towards the end. But their offense wasn't able to come up with any plays, which set up the Kansas City Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl and face off against the Philadelphia Eagles. And to be honest, it's going to be a remarkable Super Bowl. You have Patrick Mahomes returning to the Super Bowl for his 3rd Super Bowl, but also the top 2 MVP candidates, Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, are facing off against each other in the Super Bowl. I don't remember the last time a situation like this occurred. Both teams have remarkable offenses. Both teams have remarkable defenses. 2 weeks ago, we actually made a short about this, the top 5 best Super Bowl scenarios, and my number 1 Super Bowl scenario for this year and my dream Super Bowl matchup would be the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And you have to bear in mind, I despise the Philadelphia Eagles as a Cowboy fan. I know you see a Mahomes jersey on my wall, but that's because I love watching the man play. I'm saying in terms of the most compelling Super Bowl out of all teams and all the possible matchups, this would be the one. I mean, you have 2 incredibly talented offenses, 2 MVP candidates. The head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs has a remarkable legacy as the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. You have the Kelce brothers, who are on opposing sides of one another. And although I guess you could say it's a little less heated because they both have a Super Bowl at this point, it's still a fantastic matchup talent-wise as well. The Philadelphia Eagles offense has been unstoppable behind the likes of A.J. Brown, Miles Sanders, and Jalen Hurts in that triple option RPO that people have been having a lot of trouble stopping. Meanwhile, the Kansas City Chiefs are the Kansas City freaking Chiefs, and although Patrick Mahomes didn't really look like himself tonight, he had a remarkable game while still playing on one leg. The Philadelphia Eagles defense is no joke either, so Patrick Mahomes is going to have to deal with a top offense facing off against his defense, and I'm not saying that the Kansas City Chiefs defense is a joke either, but Mahomes has to go up against the likes of C.J. Gardner-Johnson, James Bradbury, big play Darius Slay, a terrifying defensive line. Once again, he meets Ndamukong Suh in the Super Bowl like he did a couple years ago. Remember what happened to Patrick Mahomes last time he faced off against a ferocious pass rush in the Super Bowl? Now, granted, he had a battered and bruised offensive line, but it still is going to be an exciting matchup. There's not an overwhelming favorite or an overwhelming underdog in this scenario, which is why it was my dream Super Bowl matchup when the playoffs started, even though it means my favorite team isn't going to be included. If you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan, I know your future seems a little uncertain. There's some big contract extensions that are going to have to come up. There's some big roster casualties that may have to come up. So how are you feeling about that? We're going to make some videos about that in your off season. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.